Okay, well, it didn't do the thing. It's going to be one of those nights, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight, we're diving into the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, the Nephilim, and ancient mysteries. And the question many churches have never discussed before in the pulpit: was Enoch preserving a forgotten piece of humanity's history? Or is modern researchers reading much too much into the ancient text? Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am bringing with me our guest, L.A. Marzulli, who has done a phenomenal amount of work, books, movies, and research over the years into all of these topics and then some. Welcome, L.A. Marzulli.
Daniel, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I know you are a very busy man, and I appreciate you coming on to the show. So tell us a little bit about you and who you are, as if most people would not know that. But give us a little bit of introduction here.
Well, I'm an author of 15 books. I'm working on number 16. It'll come out in the fall. That book will be called The Luciferian Endgame. The one that most people want to talk about is this book here, Rungs of Disclosure, which I think today is number 3 in its category on Amazon. That's pretty cool. And The Waiting Room is the first novel in 20 years. And that was what was it today? I think it was number 8 in its category, which is pretty cool out of all the books. So we're kind of stoked, but there are 15 books and there are 34 films. And it's a corpus of work. You mentioned the Book of Enoch. I have studied the Book of Enoch, not exhaustively, but definitely studied it. Enoch 1. And Enoch is quoted in Jude and referenced in other places. And it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's not part of our canon, but we can at least appreciate its historicity because it points back to the Diluvian world. And it really, it amplifies the Genesis 3:15 narrative, which to me is the gateway to the entire Bible. If a person is reading the biblical text and they don't understand and they don't have the proper interpretation, proper exegesis of a Genesis 3:15 narrative, well, then you can't get there. You don't understand anything. The rest of the Bible, in my opinion, remains shut. And so most of the churches teach from the Bible and they have an idea, but they don't have an idea. They don't understand that it's a seed war, Genesis 3:15. So you have Adam and Eve in the garden. They have sided with the devil, with the dragon, then the Kosh, the shiny one. And then you got the dragon over here, and the pre-incarnate Christ is in the middle. This is theophany. And so he says to the dragon, your seed, your offspring, your seed, your offspring will be at war with the seed, the offspring of the woman. The one coming from the woman, the proto-evangelium, the Messiah, will crush your head, you'll bruise his heel. It's the whole Bible. If we don't get that, and that's Genesis 3:15, that's like, the first page, basically. That's like right in the beginning. This is it. If we don't get that, then when we get to the tower, when we get to Genesis 6, what's going on with the flood? When we get to the Tower of Babel, wait, what's going on with Nimrod? Why does he confuse the language? What are we looking at here? All right. When we get to Abraham and the kings, whoa, wait a minute. When we get to Sodom and Gomorrah, what's going on with Sodom and Gomorrah? Why is he destroying this? Finally, when we get to the conquest of Canaan, we're looking at this thing going, why does he do this? Why does the loving God destroy everything in that land? Because the Nephilim are there. It's the culmination of a seed war. Finally, when Jesus says they'll be like the days of Noah when I return, unless we have the proper exegesis of Genesis 3:15, when Jesus utters that, we have no idea what he's talking about. And 2,000 years ago, when Jesus talked about that, the seed war, everyone knew what he was talking about. Why? Because the bones of the Nephilim, which is the progeny, which is the evidence of the seed war, were openly on display in Hebron. How do we know that? Josephus tells us. Openly on display in Hebron. Hebron's about 20 miles from Jerusalem, so people would walk through Hebron, see the bones of the giant. They all talking about it. So when Jesus utters it be like the days of Noah, there is no Sethite theory. That won't happen till the 4th century, where this guy Julius Africanus shows up on the scene and goes, well, sons of God of a godly line of Seth, and the women of earth, the human women of earth, are the hoochie mamas that came, but that's not what it says. Hoochie mama's not there, and sons of God is always translated B'nai Elohim. And there's, people are taught the Sethite view in seminary. That is the predominant view. So I'm going up against, the mainstream theologians, mainstream pastors. But think about this. If you were to keep one thing away from the pastors and one thing away from the people, that's it. So you never understand what's going on. Because when Jesus says in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, be like the days of Noah, 2,000 years ago, there is no Sethite theory. That doesn't come about till the 4th century. Everyone knows what he's talking about because the bones of the Nephilim are in Hebron. And Josephus tells us that the bones of the Nephilim, which were bones so large and countenance so different from normal men. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. There it is. And so the church at large is ignorant of it, which is really a bad thing. Notice that I haven't even touched the Book of Enoch. I'm just going right from scripture. Genesis 3:15, then you get Genesis 6, the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which always refer back to the angelic host. It's always that way. That's how it's translated. And it's just like people who are amillennial and say, well, all this is allegory. Prophecy really doesn't mean anything. You can't figure anything out. If prophecy is allegorical, then good luck trying to figure out where we are on the timeline. And those who hold the preterist position, well, all this happened back in the 1st century. Well, then what's Israel doing back in the land? How do you factor in Amos 9, 14 and 15, which states, I will bring back the captives of my people Israel. They will build the waste cities and inhabit them. They will plant vineyards and drink the wine from them. They will plant gardens, eat the fruit from them. I will plant them in their land. And never again will they be plucked up out of the land I have given them. So there is no Israel to May 14th, 1948. There's a diaspora from basically AD 70, but which when the Romans come in and destroy everything, kill about 1 million Jews, cart everybody off. But then the Bar Kokhba revolt happens around 130 AD, like, a few years later, decades later. And that's it. No Jew is allowed in Jerusalem until Constantine converts to Christianity. Right. His mother, Helena, goes down, and there's an edict of toleration and everybody is allowed back in. But at that time, when Helena goes in to Jerusalem, there's a temple, the Temple Mount, which was raised, the temple's gone. There's the Temple of Jupiter is on there. Is the Temple of Jupiter is on the Temple Mount. The Temple of Venus is where the crucifixion happened and the burial. It's right there. So Helena goes, well, where was the tomb? See that Temple of Venus over there? That's where it was. So we deconstruct it, and today it's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the edicule is the building which surrounds the tomb. But there you go. So we are in the last of the last days. Everything is, I'll date myself, everything is full tilt boogie at the moment. I mean, this thing is the plane has left the runway. We've got AI, which is already replacing jobs. We have AI, which is all over the internet. You type in your search engine and AI gives you, in a matter of seconds, what you're looking for. Then you can scroll down and hit websites. But AI has already done the work. How is that possible? I can go on AI and I can, because I'm on ChatGPT too, and I pay for that. I can go and say, give me a graphic of what the Nephilim might have looked like. Make it a giant, that's not a character, not sci-fi, about 12 feet tall, like maybe Goliath was, 9 foot to 12 feet, big, muscular, strong. And okay, I want to put this in like a battle scene. I can go in and I can keep typing and make it look more realistic, and I can work it. And I've just saved a couple $1,000 because I don't need a graphic artist. This is where we are. And more importantly, we don't know what the truth is anymore. We don't know. We don't know what we're looking at. Is that real? The government just released a bunch of new UFO footage. To me, it's nothing new. This is the Kumbergaz UFO right there. You can see it right there. There's the UFO. There are the two beings inside the cockpit right here. They are the grays. And all this is in our 10-box DVD set. And by the way, right now, you can watch all the films for $5 a piece. There's 10 films there. Right after the day of the disclosure day comes out on next month, June 12th, it's released. I'll be watching it at the IMAX on the 11th. From that to the rest of June, you can watch every film for $1. Every film for $1, because we want to get the information out. And from here on out, I'll be doing little vignettes, because my business partner, Gil Zimmerman, and I work tirelessly. And I didn't understand why the Lord was having us get these films out. Now I know. There's other films, but there's usually one film, and they don't go anywhere. You know, we went to the debris field in Roswell. That's a piece of the metal that we dug up in the debris field. There it is. We put it in a scanning electron microscope at what was formerly Seal Lab. It's an aluminum alloy, but it's an unknown aluminum alloy. It's right between two known aluminum alloys. The metallurgist was perplexed because she couldn't get it to fixate on one alloy. She's going, this is really weird. I go, well, are you sure? And then what she didn't know is Chuck Zukowski was one of our guides, and Frank Kimbler. They had pieces of metal, which they took to labs, who did the same thing, right in between two known aluminum alloys. And then, of course, when I told her that this metal came from the debris field right outside Roswell, that's when, she perked up and was very interested. More testing needs to be done, specifically the isotopic ratio. That would be interested to see. So we're going to lower the price to $1 per film. I mean, if you can't afford $1, then then you can't afford to be on the internet. That's how that works, right? So you can watch all the films. And what I'm going to be doing for the next several weeks is showing snippets of the films. And we have trailers already for all the films. But I'm going to take the film and I'm going to go, okay, let's look at this. And there'll be like a little bug on it so people can't steal it, because of course they will. Welcome to the internet, right? The Wild West, as it were, of cyberspace. And I'll be walking people through it. We've got 10 films on this. Gil Zimmerman and I work feverishly to get these films out. Now I know why. Because the other side of the aisle is saying, oh, these are extraterrestrials, from some faraway galaxy. And Steven Spielberg, says, surely we can't, with such a vast universe, we can't be alone. And in his film, you have Mother Superior, right? The Catholic Mother Superior, the nun, all dressed up. She's an actress, but she's all dressed up to look like Mother Superior. And you hear her voice, and it says, surely, with God creating such a vast universe, he wouldn't have made us the only living beings. Oh, yeah, he would. Why not? You don't know that. Nobody knows where we are. Fermi's paradox states that, if the universe is teeming with life, where the heck is everybody? So where is everybody? And nobody knows. God's going to roll up the heavens like a scroll. He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. How does that work? We don't know. He's going to eliminate the oceans. Why? Because that's where all the bases are. Yes, they're interdimensional, but the bases here are deep, deep, deep underneath the oceans. Catalina, which is right outside, when I go down my canyon, I can see Catalina Island. That's where we've discovered a 9-foot giant. In fact, I'm going to show you that. This is from the big book, On the Trail of the Nephilim. That's how thick it is. And there's over 350 full-color photographs. So this is the picture that I discovered at the Catalina Island Museum right there. That's it. That's Ralph Glidden, who's 5'8". That's a 9-footer directly in front of him. And we had 3 different researchers take that and roll with it. And this is what it looks like. We put the skeleton, we dumped it down a little at 8'6", but 2 of the other researchers put it just over 9 feet. That's right on Catalina Island. In our film, I got all these props here. In our films, I interviewed a man who was a marathon runner. Okay, this guy's a marathon runner, And so he goes out, and there's a marathon out on Catalina Island. And this UFO, he gives his testimony, comes up out of the ocean and comes directly over where he's standing on the balcony. Everybody saw it. Catalina Island, that trench is a shipping lane, and it's one of the deepest places in all the oceans in the world.
Right.
A perfect place for these things to hide. And that's where they hide. And this is where Admiral Gallaudet, he's a one-star admiral, was in front of Congress and stated that these objects moved with such speed that they were all, completely blown away that these USOs, underwater submersible objects, move with such speed because water is a lot of friction, way faster than anything we have, way faster. So he's blown away, and he's talking to Congress. And so, May 8th was a day that changed everything because the government admitted that the phenomenon is real and they don't have all the answers. And then we had another dump just a few days ago, more fuzzy photos, but it's there, and testimony and eyewitness accounts and, things in Iraq and all these other places. And it's good. It's good that the government finally comes clean.
Right.
So we're very close to some sort of announcement by our president, Donald Trump. He'll say it probably on a Friday night. He'll stand up and go, "We're not alone in the universe." And how does that affect the average Christian? And there's a segment in the church when you bring up this stuff, they go, "Well, LA, that's fine. I'm glad that that's your, bailiwick, as it were. But we're Jesus only here. We just want to talk about Jesus. That's really all we want to say." And my argument to that is, okay, let's do that. Let's just talk about Jesus. So in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13, the Synoptic Gospels, why would Jesus warn us to be like the days of Noah? Why would he say that? He has the entire Tanakh to reference. No, he goes to one place, days of Noah. And everyone knows what he's talking about because the bones of the Nephilim, as I said earlier, are on display in Hebron, 20 miles away. They all know what he's talking about. Nephilim, fallen angels, are going to come back down here again? No. Oh, yeah. And then he says, men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth because the powers of heaven will be shaken. Okay, that's Jesus. We're just Jesus only. That's all we're doing here, right? And then he warns us that even the elect would be deceived. If that were possible, even the elect would be deceived. So you have three statements by our Lord who's trying to warn us. Many will come in my name saying, "I am the Christ." Check that off. I have a whole segment on that. Many have come through the centuries, and they're still running around the planet telling people that they're Jesus, and they're not Jesus. And then you have Paul, who says the dragon, Satan, will come with all signs and lying wonders. Jesus only. And then we're just talking the gospel. We're in the word. We're not going to be political here. We're not going to talk about, nope, this is in the Bible. So that's what we're doing. Then you get 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. And I got this from my friend Mando Gonzalez, because we were arguing about 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Do not be troubled in mind or spirit that the day of the Lord is coming or gathering to him, that they will not happen until the apostasia happens. Well, Tommy Ice believes that the word apostasia means rapture. Up we go. Good for him. Mando Gonzalez believes that this is to the Jews. The apostasy happens just to the Jews. L.A. Marzulli believes that the apostasia is to the church. Which is it? Well, when you go over to 1 Timothy chapter 4, what does Paul say? The Spirit expressly states, that's strong language, the Spirit of the Lord, I added that. The Spirit expressly states that in the latter days, some will depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and the doctrines of demons. So for those of you out there who think once saved, always saved, think again. I'm not making this up. Some will depart from the faith. So they profess to be Christians, but they have given heed to seducing spirits and the doctrines of demons. What are the doctrines of demons? Oh, Jesus didn't speak everything into existence. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. That's the truth. What do the scientific community, academia, what do they uphold? What do they espouse? The Darwinian paradigm. All this just happened. So from nothing, we got the complexity. We got human life. Have you ever looked at a human heart? When you look at an ultrasound of a little 8-week, 12-week baby, 12 weeks, let's say, and the heart's there going boom, 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 boom. How does that work? They don't know. All they know is that somehow in the double helix of life, the genetic code that's in our DNA, it forms a heart and the thing beats. There's no batteries. I mean, seriously? And you're trying to tell me that somehow evolution figured this out? Well,
Right.
it can't, because evolution is it's just mindless. It's just evolves over billions and billions of years. They just keep adding zeros because they know it doesn't work, and it doesn't work. So when we look at all of this, and then we go, the Spirit expressly states in the last days, some will depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and the doctrine of demons. The doctrine of demons, seducing spirits, first of all, is the evolutionary thing, but they supplant the word, which we just quoted. The beginning was the word was with God, that whole phrase. And they say, well, maybe we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. And that is the coming great deception, which is a term I coined in my 1998 book, Nephilim, the Truth is Here. That's where we are. And that's what Steven Spielberg's film, this Disclosure Day, is espousing. That's what New Agers talk about constantly. The Mario cartoon film thing that just happened a couple of months ago, there, same thing. Oh, the universe is such a vast place, there has to be life elsewhere. Fermi's paradox. If the universe is teeming with life, where is everybody? No, we get these weird things happening. They show up, they abduct people, they take sperm from the men, ovum from the women. Sometimes the women are impregnated by them. And in the 3rd month of pregnancy, they take that hybrid entity out of the woman, but it must live in an artificial womb. That's what the cattle mutilations are about. We have a film on abductions. We have a film on cattle mutilations.
So it's very interesting because I want to kind of piggyback on a couple of things you said. First of all, I think the most beautiful and poetic explanation of creation is just the first opening words of the Gospel of John.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. It was with God in the beginning.
Absolutely. That is the cleanest, most
There it is.
beautifully phrased way of putting all of the first chapter of Genesis together. And the first time I read that, I was like, wait a minute, this proves Trinitarians are not far away from understanding something here. So let me go back to this. And then, you brought up the so many things, so many points that I really wanted to for you to bring up. I'm glad I let you go there because one of the things, one of the questions I have is, don't you feel like there's been a gradual stepping away for some time anyway? Because honestly, first of all, when it comes to the Protestants, we've never been able to agree on anything. We can't even agree on the ritual of baptism.
Bingo.
We can't agree on anything.
I agree.
So religion itself, and I love the fact that a lot of churches like to refer to, relationship over religion, but the dogma is tripping everybody up. Well, this is what I believe. It's those words, this is what I believe, can be very detrimental in the church, I believe. I believe that much, I do. Because, and here's what, well, actually, I know that because I've seen it in action. I've seen great pastors mislead entire congregations by, this is what I feel or this is what I believe is true. And they'll go into this whole thing. Look, if baptism was even a thing for churches to be fighting about, why do we have the thief on the cross? There was no ordinances. There was no nothing. He had nothing going on there. He was literally hanging in the air on a tree. All he did was confess his belief and understanding of who Jesus was, his understanding. He knew. He didn't believe, he knew, because he turned to the other guy and said, "What?" He literally blasted him. You know, who are you? Who are you to be questioning this man? This man who's done nothing. How did he know that? If it wasn't a spiritual revelation, if it wasn't knowing. And that, I think, is where the great deception started millennia ago with the church itself, because we have danced around things. People will gatekeep. The churches will gatekeep. Like you said, I went to a church that was all about, every week it was about the same story. It was about the divinity of Christ, which is a great message. But if you ask them, first of all, I had elders in my class going to hear a newbie talking about a book that they should have already understood, which was the Book of Romans. Why are you going to a newbie to find out what I know about it? You should already know this. When they got to some of the harder questions that they always ask, like predestination and so forth like that, they were highly confused as to how I could know this stuff and be as new as I was at the time. And I'm like, and you let me teach a class. That's the funny part. But what I really want to, and you've already kind of touched on it, but I really want to dive into this a little bit. Why do you think so many of the churches avoid discussing Genesis 6 altogether?
Well, because it points back to the supernatural world, and they'll say the rebuttal to that is, well, we'll be like the angels. Okay, we're not given in marriage. I understand that. But you think they're going to erase all of our equipment that we have? Look, what people don't understand is Eve is the first female. Until that time, no one had seen a female. All the females didn't exist because there are no female angels. So the female form did not exist until Eve. And this is why it said the angels of heaven, the sons of God, saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. This is where the whole Sethite theory just collapses. So the sons of Seth didn't have sisters? Excuse me, what? You know, what are you talking about? You're just making this stuff up because you don't like the supernatural worldview, because you're terrified of the fact that fallen angels came down, specifically the Watchers, according to Enoch. Enoch just amplifies it. The angels of heaven came down. They saw the women, that they were beautiful. They took wives, plural. They went into them, and you had this hybrid being, which, by the way, is eternal. The body isn't, but the spirit is. It's eternal. And the Nephilim walked the earth. And if you espouse to the Sethite theory, then none of this makes any sense. And who cares about Goliath? Oh, well, Goliath was just a big guy. See the way you have to tap dance around everything? If you hold to the Sethite view, you can't get there from here. And people do tenaciously. They'll argue it till the cows come home. Believe what you want to believe. I'm not going to debate. You know, I've got 34 films and 15 books. Read my books. Why do I want to give you a platform and debate on something which to me is absolutely so obvious that it doesn't need a debate? Sons of God is always translated from the Hebrew, B'nai Ha-Elohim. It always refers to the angelic host. End of story. The Sethite view was originated by Julius Africanus in the 4th century. He just pulled a theological rabbit out of his hat. And to me, that's absolute blasphemy, because what he does is he denudes, he just completely, he cuts off the whole spirituality, the whole supernatural world that was manifesting. And why would Jesus warn us to be like, they said no, and he returns? Because they're back and they're doing it. How do we know that? Watch our 4th film on the abductions. Hybrids are walking amongst us. Title of Dr. David Jacobs' book. They are. I haven't seen one although that's not entirely true. I may have seen one in just passing very quickly in a car, but I can't prove that. But Al Matthews, who's in our film on abductions, he had an encounter. Absolutely had an encounter. Karen Wilkinson, who wrote the book that we published, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, she knows all about these guys. Emil Jurek, who's in our film on abductions, he knows all about it. So hybrids are walking amongst us. It's like the days of Noah. I remember asking a late Chuck Missler, what do you think about the hybrids? And he looked at me and says, Satan's outnumbered 2-1, without missing a beat. Just boom, just gave me the answer just like that. And he's right. Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. It's like the days of Noah. It's all right there. But if you've got the wrong interpretation of Genesis 3:15, offspring, it doesn't, the seed of a dragon, well, it really doesn't say that. And then Genesis 6, well, it was, the godly line of Seth. You're just making stuff up. Then you can't possibly figure out any of the end times and where we are. You can't figure it out. And you certainly can't start talking about, these guys, the whole UFO thing, because people are taken and there are hybrids and people have seen them. And we've had too many witnesses come forward. So it's complex, and yet with the proper exegesis of scripture, everything makes sense. It just all, in my opinion, it just dovetails together. And I find that, astounding.
And we would be really kind of remiss if we didn't mention that cattle mutilation is not the only thing. Katie Page has actually talked about this on my show before, that, and I've known this for quite some time too, that there have been cases of human beings
Mutilated.
who've been mutilated, and
That's
they
in our film.
literally the same conditions as the cattle.
Mhm.
So, and this has not been going on for a week. This has been going on a long time.
Long time.
So one of the things I want to point out too is, a very important message that Paul wrote at the very beginning of the book of Romans was that there were two types of revelation. There was the revelation given to the Jews, which was the law. But in Romans chapter 1, he was talking to the Gentiles. And the thing he said to the Gentiles is, you have the revelation of creation itself. I created this planet. My signature's on everything. How does this and this and this not say I am God? And that's what Paul was trying to get through in chapter 1 of Romans, was that the Gentiles were not without proof of the living God, and therefore they need Christ. And that message even has been completely overlooked by the church. They focus on one or two verses in that whole book or in that whole chapter. And the big message of all of this is worldly stuff. You guys need Jesus. You need Jesus. And when we go into that, we understand all things point to God's existence. There's some beautiful video out there. How Great Is Our God talks about the mysteries of the universe and how God created the universe basically for his own enjoyment, for his own glory, for his own, to bring about, first of all, yet another very powerful conviction to us. Yes, there is a God, because how does all this stuff happen without a senior intelligence, something that's way more intelligent than we are, and more powerful? Because yes, you can break down the universe to mathematical equation, but what does that prove? That proves that divine origin has to be. All things are created, and science ultimately would, if they would wake up, would be able to point out that none of this is possible without something bigger than we can understand. So I really want to kind of get back into talking a little bit. The Nephilim, it was an accepted uh, idea in Judaism during the Second Temple period. So how did modern Christianity become so disconnected to it? That's what I really want to know. It's like, where do we start unpacking where we went wrong?
It's Julius Africanus in the 4th century. Augustine picks up on it. Then we go into the Dark Ages. No one gets to read the Bible until 1444. Gutenberg invents the printing press. All of a sudden, the Bible can reach the common man. Tyndale is burned at the stake. Just remember that. For what? Translating the Bible in English. No, no, no. So Darby did not invent the rapture. It was always there. All he did is he had access to the scriptures. And for the first time in centuries, he was able to go, we're going up at some point. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. We shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. The trumpet will sound and we will rise up imperishable, because the perishable must be clothed with the imperishable and the mortal with immortality. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, the trump of God. The dead in Christ will rise first. We who are alive and remain will be caught up, harpazo. That's where we get the word rapture from. Harpazo, snatched away. And so wherever we're with the Lord, we meet the Lord in the clouds, and so shall we evermore be with him. So we're running out of time here because I'm really hungry. I got to go to dinner. But before I go, we have a film on this. I just want to show you something here. I can get it real quick. Yeah, here it is. It's on the Shroud of Turin. And the reason why I bring this up is because this is what it looks like. And so it's a very faint image of a man. If you get close to it, you can't see it. You got to back away at least 6 feet, and then you get this faint image of a man. That's it. That's what it looks like. But in 1898, the photographer Seconda Pia was commissioned by the church, the cathedral in Turin, Italy, to take the first pictures of the shroud. So he did. Up until that point, no pictures, because pictures, had just been invented. So he takes these photographs. This is a true story. And he's in his dark room. This is not the days of the iPhone, click, instant gratification. No, you took the glass plate out, you put it in the wooden box, you take it up in your dark room. Now it's a chemical solution. And what came up as he's doing this was this. That's what he sees. And he thinks to himself, I'm the first person to see the face of Christ in 2,000 years. And that is what the shroud looks like. Look at the scourge marks. Notice that the wound doesn't go through the palm. It's further down in the palm. It's towards the wrist. Notice the blood right here coming out of the chest, the bilirubin, a mixture of blood and water. And the scourging is over every part of his body, both front and rear. It's over every part of his body. The crown of thorns is like a helmet of thorns. I'm not making this up. I call it God's calling card, because that's what it is. And he left it for us. This is forensic evidence of the fully God, fully man, Jesus the Messiah. And it's so funny. You show this to people. Oh, it's a hoax. Excuse me, how was it done? So a 13th century forger or a 14th century forger that's going to know about photography, and it's never been duplicated, ever, 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 ever. It's God's calling card. And the carbon-14 dating, we show this in the film, was skewed. They went in and they were supposed to take 3 different samples from 3 different parts of the shroud. They shoo everybody out of the room. They take one sample from here, the corner of the shroud. Comes back medieval. Okay, I get that. So get this. And this is all in the film. There's a guy by the name of Joe Marino who now runs Barry Schwartz, because Barry Schwartz passed away. He's in the film. Shroud.com. So for you skeptics out there, before you start emailing me, please don't. Go to shroud.com and spend an hour. At least understand something of what you're looking at. Let me get a sip. So Joe Marino and his wife, Sue, looked at this and they theorized that where they took the shroud sample from was from a patch job, and they wrote a paper on this. Enter Ray Rogers, who was the Shroud of Turin textile expert, and he had samples. So he goes down, takes the samples out from the shroud, small fibers, and he looks at them and he goes, "Oh my gosh, they're right," because they saw the reweaving, which completely skewed the shroud to the 14th century, 15th century, whatever it was, medieval. And that was it. I mean, and so that's been debunked. It's never been duplicated at all. And we believe that a burst of light created that image on the shroud. And so people go, well, what's this holy fire stuff, LA? Well, it's biblical. Connect the dots. Moses sees what? A bush that burns but doesn't burn. How is that possible? The Israelites are guided through their 40 years of wandering by what? A pillar of flame. What the heck is that? What happens with the Ark of the Covenant? What's that flame that's there? What is the flame that appears over the apostles' heads at the day of Pentecost? So I'm not making this up. I'm not. And the holy fire appears in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the tomb was. And we have all these different people throughout the centuries talking about the holy fire manifesting. So we believe that there was a burst of light in the tomb, which created this moments before the resurrection, perhaps a millisecond before the resurrection. And we have an artifact called the Sudarium of Oviedo. The Sudarium of Oviedo is a cloth that was wrapped around Jesus's head, that was folded up and placed apart from the body. So when they got him to the tomb, they wrap the face when they're taking him off the cross out of respect for the dead, but it's got blood on it. So it has to be buried with the condemned, with the man, which is Jewish law. So the Sudarium of Oviedo has been in Oviedo, Spain since the 7th century. And only because of modernity and the science that we have in modernity, we are able to take the Sudarium of Oviedo and overlay it on the face of the man on the shroud. There are well over 100 points of congruency, which proves that the Sudarium of Oviedo was on the same man that was in the Shroud of Turin, God's calling card. And he left it for us because he knew we'd be in the era of science. Because you go back 150 years ago, you can't do it. But now you can do it. You can take the Sudarium, overlay it on the shroud, and go, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. All of this is on shroud.com. Daniel, it's been great. I'd love to come back when I have more time and talk to you.
Definitely.
I wish your listeners well. I wish you well. And, folks, if you think you know Jesus, but you don't know Jesus, then you don't know Jesus. How do you get to know Jesus? Real simple. You confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, and you will be saved. It says nothing about baptism, does it? To circle back to that. Not a thing. Not a thing. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, and I will definitely be asking you back.
Let's do it again. Sounds good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
God bless.
Bless you too, and you have a good evening. Okay. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that was quite an experience. Definitely. And probably one of the most intense interviews I've had. Actually, it wasn't a whole lot of an interview, was it? I will definitely be asking for LA to come back and join us at a later date. There are several things I would like to go over with him that we didn't quite get to tonight, but that's okay. So, in closing, one of the things I want to bring to you guys' attention is the show is going through some structural changes and some a little bit of brand changing, starting with the YouTube group, as some of you may have recognized tonight. I've already gone through and started working on that. We now have an identity for those who follow and are starting to form a community with Magical Journey Podcast. I'm not going to go into a lot of that right now because there's some other things I want to cover with you before I sign off. But hold on a second. I was really not expecting an immediate ending like that to tonight's episode, but that's okay. Bear with me for just a minute. So the new static symbol syndicate, it is the newly recognized group for the followers is still Magical Journey Podcast. From now on, my followers, my supporters will be part of the static syndicate. So whether you're just on here, whether you're in the group, however you decide to reach out and communicate with us, we will consider you a member of the community. And so that's one of the things that's part of the group rebranding of sorts. It's actually not the group itself, but the community that's getting an identity finally. Because until now, we really haven't done any of that. You'll notice the changes as you continue on. So, if you did make it this far, please go to Facebook and to the Magical Journey podcast group there and join us. It's going to start taking on a little bit more of a community vibe to it as we go along. And as this continues to gel and kind of evolve, you'll see more of what I'm trying to talk about right now. Excuse me. You'll also notice that we are currently holding steady at only 1 or 2 mods, which will also be part of the new format here as well. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to really discuss it publicly, but due to ongoing disagreements with the mod team about whose show this is and who's in charge and who is modding, we have decided to kind of part ways. So unfortunately, some of my mods will no longer be on the team. I know there are people who are strong supporters of some of that team, but understand that my stance is that this is my show, and I really don't need to have co-owners at this point in the show. So that's what I'm going to say about that. Let's talk for just a minute about next week's show. I'm going to get into a couple of my thoughts on today's show right after that. So where are we at? Next week, let me get to it. I have Rachel Spears on talking about her Appalachian haunting experiences. And she's also had some experiences with um, cryptids and some other things like that. So we're going to touch base on all the things next week with her on her experiences. And then the following week, we are going to do a conversation with Trenton Battle, who is he's head of the Kentucky chapter of the North American Dogman Project. So that probably tells you what that episode is going to be about. So those are the two next upcoming shows. Go on to the channel for updates of the upcoming shows. They'll be listed on there with upcoming show on the thumbnail. Let me kind of go into a little bit of tonight's episode a little bit and give some feedback. I really am in agreement with LA on what he's saying. There's a lot of truth to um, what's been said tonight. I believe, I know that there are many things that we touch on tonight that go very much in alignment with my understanding of biblical teaching of what the Bible actually says. And we didn't even get into the Book of Enoch. Um, I'll have him back at another time to talk about the Book of Enoch. I believe that that is an important topic because it's become a cultural phenomena almost within the church uh, and online in the last few months, especially, but in the last year or so, increasingly so. So, um, I think we all can agree that the times we're living in very interesting. The experiences that we have. A lot of people ask me, "Do I believe that all of these things are connected?" Absolutely, I do. At one point, I was not really sure of it. I questioned it. I question a lot of things, but I am increasingly of the understanding that it is all connected. Now, do I believe that there are probably some natural things out there or some things out there that's kind of left to um, to kind of speculation for us because we don't know all the things. Hey, Steamboat, how are you doing? We don't know all the things. We don't know. There's still species of animals, plants, and reptiles, all kinds of things that we're just now discovering. So some things we really don't know yet, as far as cryptids and so forth like that go. There are some things um, that may actually be organic life that we uh, see as being something else, something paranormal or something supernatural. But I think it's important for us to understand that there is strong evidence based on scripture, based on our understanding historically of things and so forth, of the seed war. And if you know, you know. And while there are a lot of people who will debate the fact, a lot of people who will literally argue with you about the fact, I think it would be wise for us to err on the side of caution when second guessing the things that are obviously very much documented in scripture and in history. So keep that in mind. I don't talk about these topics often, and I don't talk about these things publicly very often. But that is my conviction at this point on this particular subject. And I want to thank Tiger Lily for suggesting LA coming on the show. This was a call out. This is a call out to you. Shout out for making the suggestion, because it was a good suggestion. And we will have him back at a later date to discuss other things. One other thing I do want to say before I sign off tonight, after the last show in June, starting with the first show in July, I will be changing days and times of the show. I'm finding more and more that Friday night is not the ample time to have the show on. So, starting in July, we will be doing the show on Saturday nights at 7 Central Time. That is in July. I'll be talking about this more, reminding you guys of that. And I will also be updating the new post and images. Will all start saying this as of July. So mark that on your calendar. First show in July will be when we start the Saturday night podcast, which means ultimately I can call it Saturday Night Live in my post. You have no idea how excited I am about that. Guys, have a really great and blessed rest of your weekend. I am going to go and kind of decompress from a very busy day and a very exhausting day. I will see you again next week, and may your journey always be magical.